Okay, who is the original creditor? The original creditor is the consumer, family. How is the consumer the original creditor? The consumer is the original creditor because the consumer is the one who actually extends the credit to the corporation. And somebody asks, well, how did the consumer extend the credit to the corporation? The consumer extended the credit to the corporation by transferring the asset to the corporation for equal valuable consideration in exchange, which reduces and eliminates the debt on the consumer's behalf. Then somebody asks, well, what was the asset? The asset is the application, family. Once the consumer signs the application and put their social security number on that document becomes a valuable asset and an investment instrument, which essentially makes the consumer an investor of the corporation. And the return on investment is the monthly statements slash invoices that the consumer receives every month. Okay, let's talk about power of the social. What is a social security card? A social security card is essentially a credit card. The social is actually what funds and prepays the transaction, and the application is just the asset that secures the transaction just in case the consumer default on their contractual obligations. Okay, and somebody asks, well, what is the consumer contractual obligations? The consumer contractual obligations is that they either have to pay or they have to perform, family. Okay, what is performance? Performance is basically the consumer authorizing the transaction, because the corporation can't access the funds without your authorization. And if you don't never authorize it or pay, it's considered breach of contract. And some people might ask, well, why I gotta do all of this if it's already prepaid? Because, family, you are the owner of the account. It's just like with your bank account. Can't nobody just walk inside your bank and withdraw funds out of your bank account without your authorization. It's the same with this. Okay, you have to authorize the transfer. That is basically what you really doing for your contractual obligations. Your contractual obligations when you perform is you authorizing the transfer. Okay. Then let's talk about the contract. We're going to talk about the contract now, family. 1 second. We're going to talk about what makes a valid contract. What makes a contract valid? In order for a contract to be valid, both parties must provide consideration, which is something of value exchanged between the two parties, okay? So, if a contract states that the consumer relinquish all titles, rights, interests, and proceeds from his property, it is indeed a red flag, and the question should be, well, what do the consumer get in return? Because if the consumer receives nothing or very little in exchange, that contract is considered to be one-sided and provide grounds for redress and rescission, and by law, is considered a fraudulent contract. Okay, family? Now we're going to talk about how do interest actually works. Well, in a security agreement, both parties are entitled to interest, but the interest they entitled to serve two different purposes. The consumer has a direct interest in the collateral because they own it, which means they can control it to secure and fulfill their obligations. The consumer grants the corporation with a secondary interest, which is a legal claim to the collateral if they was to fail to meet their obligations. That's basically the promise of the promissory note, family. The consumer is basically saying, look, this is my property. I own it. I control it. But if I don't do what I say I'm going to do, you can take it to cover my end of the deal. So it's really no losing. The transaction is secure either way it go. Okay, family? Now, let's talk about the collateral. Did you know that you really supposed to receive your collateral back, family, after the deal is sealed, after you fulfill your contractual obligations? Let's talk about it. Now, once again, just think about it. You really supposed to, after you fulfill your contractual obligations, you really supposed to get your collateral back. Just think about it. If after you lease, if after your lease is up, you get your security deposit back, don't you? Okay, the same is supposed to go for the security collateral as well, because that's the real security deposit. The landlord is actually getting paid like 3 times. First, by the collateral. Second, by the cash security deposit. Third, by the monthly payments you make every month. And then at the end of your lease, they give you your security deposit back, which is just 1 month worth of payment, while they just made 2 years worth of payment off your ass, which is the value of the collateral that equals the full term of your contract and the payments you made every month on top of that. But to play God's advocate, they actually did give you equal valuable consideration. Do you know what that was? The account receivables, family, which is the bill/invoices that they send you every month, which is a reflection of the value of the collateral you gave. This is how they balance the transaction.